And once again, hail to the chief and the President of the United States.
President of the United States and Mrs. Reagan, accompanied by Chancellor and Mrs. Cole.
For the art, President Ronald Reagan, his wife Nancy, and right behind them, Chancellor and Mrs. Cole. The President is once again reading West Berlin Governing Mayor Abraham Blueprint and the U.S. Ambassador to West Germany, Richard Berg.
Mr. President, Mrs. Reagan, Herr Bundeskanzler, Frau Kohl, it is a special honor for me to welcome you to this American birthday party for Berlin. As you can see, Mr. President, from the enthusiastic reaction of the Berliners and the Americans here, our guests share my feeling that it is good to have you and Mrs. Reagan back in Berlin. Mr. President, the guests here have followed your visit to Berlin throughout the day on a large TV screen in this hall. And like those of us present at the Brandenburg Gate, we have all been deeply stirred by your message of freedom and hope. Our celebration of Berlin's 750th birthday today bears witness to the high hopes we all hold for the future of this great city. The distinguished Berliners on this stage with us are why we can believe in Berlin, for they represent the heroic deeds of the past, the remarkable achievements of the present, and the bright promise of the future. Mr. President, I know you are looking forward to presenting the birthday wishes of the American people to the city. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States of America.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. And do I understand correctly? You say they've already heard me on that speech? Well, Chancellor Kohl and Mayor Diefken and Ambassador Bert, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me to be able to join you today at this 750th birthday party for the city of Berlin. I'm especially pleased to be here today because, well, it's not often that I get to go to a birthday party for something that's older than I am. But to subject you to a second speech here, I keep thinking of a story of ancient Rome where on a Saturday afternoon the hungry lions were turned loose on the little group of people there on the floor of the Colosseum, and they came charging toward them, and one individual stepped out of the group, said something very quietly, and the lions all laid down. Well, the crowd was enraged and horrified that they're going to be denied the show, and Caesar sent for the man who had spoken to the lions, and they brought him, and he said, "What did you say to them that made them act like that?" And he said, "I just told them that after they ate, there'd be speeches." Well, let me begin. Let me begin by conveying the warmest greetings of the American people to all of you here today. While only a small fraction of the Berlin community can be here in this hall, Our good wishes go to all the residents of this marvelous city, wherever they may live. And I am happy to see so many young people here this afternoon. There are two groups of local teenagers I would like to greet in a special way. The graduating classes of the Berlin American High School and of the city's John F. Kennedy School. Congratulations on a job well done. Well, this is a celebration for all of Berlin. For those of you in the East who are watching on television but unable to attend in person, you're here with us in spirit. The traditional banners of Berlin's 20 districts, east and west, around this hall remind me of the kinship that exists among all people of this city. By its very existence and character, Berlin remains the most compelling argument for an open world. We're reminded of the many traditions of openness and democracy that have marked the history of this city. Missed me. America has a special relationship with Berlin that extends beyond formal political or economic ties. Like America, Berlin is a place of great energy. We see our own hopes and ideals mirrored in the energy and courage of Berliners and draw strength from our joint efforts here. This sense is symbolized by the nearly 14,000 American soldiers, airmen, and their families who live and work in close cooperation with Berliners to ensure the defense of our common goals. And let me make one point clear. Our troops will remain here as long as they're wanted and needed by Berliners to demonstrate to the other side that force and coercion cannot succeed. Several thousand other Americans from all walks of life make an important contribution to the business and cultural life of this city. We've joined the centuries-old tradition of Berlin, and in a real sense, we have become Berliners. A few moments ago, here at Tempelhof, I shook hands with three men who testify to the way you Berliners and we Americans play such a proud role in each other's lives. Three former U.S. Air Force pilots, veterans of one of the most remarkable operations in modern history, the Berlin Airlift. On his flights, Colonel Gale Halverson tossed small candy-filled parachutes to the children of Berlin as his plane approached the Tempelhof runway. Yes, Colonel Halverson was one of the famous Rosina bombers, or bomber pilots, who every Berliner of that generation still remembers with warmth and affection. Another airlift veteran, Captain Jack Bennett, has many friends here today. He lives in Berlin. As for Colonel Alan Chilander, when the Soviets blockaded Berlin, Colonel Chilander had been back in civilian life for just 8 months. He and his wife had an infant son and another child on the way. Those precious 8 months were the first Colonel Chilander had been able to devote to his family since the long years of the war. Yet, when called up for the airlift, he never hesitated. Looking back on those days of constant hardship, of danger scorned, Colonel Chilander says simply this: we had a job to do, and we did it. Well, in those few words, hear the understatement of a hero. I am especially pleased that Colonel Chilander and his son, who saw him only briefly before he returned to service to help fight the blockade, and who is now my own military aide, are both with us here today. I have met other heroes as well, German heroes of Berlin. Treimer Frauen, women who 40 years ago collected and cleaned bricks from the rubble to rebuild their homes, their churches, their schools, their very way of life. A scholar expelled by the Soviets from the city's old Humboldt University in the East, who then joined in founding what has become one of the world's major institutions of higher learning, the Free University of Berlin. A group of RIAS employees of the first hour who helped us get the voice of freedom on the city's airwaves in those early post-war years and ever since. For 40 years, radio in the American sector has been a voice of freedom and an essential part of our continuing commitment to Berlin. And now we're taking another important step in German-American relations by moving forward to make RIAS television a reality. I can't help but wonder if they'll rerun Bedtime for Bonzo. But an East Berlin border guard who decided to live in freedom rather than building a wall that removes even the most basic rights of freedom and self-government. Well, then, too, I have met Berliners whose actions speak with confidence of the city's present and future. A professor who's helped make Berlin one of the world's leading centers of research in the field of laser medicine, and the winners of the 1987 computer contest sponsored by the Berlin USA Initiative. In each face, I've seen abiding pride in this city and its accomplishments. Indeed, there's been something deeply moving, something humbling about meeting these heroes of Berlin. I feel your pride in what you've done for your city, your zest for life, your confidence and hope from having overcome so many obstacles, and the strength of your commitment to overcome those that remain. You've demonstrated to the world the value of human liberty, and perhaps the courage of your example is the greatest gift you can give to us every day of our lives. Today, when most Americans think of Berlin, they recall our post-war relationship with this city. And as we celebrate this 750th birthday, it's worth remembering that America's ties with Berlin go back many years. More than 20 American communities bear the name Berlin. 3 of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and John Adams, negotiated a treaty of friendship and commerce with Frederick the Great in 1785, establishing a basis for the special relationship that we enjoy today. Americans were affected in other ways by this city when some of the best and brightest people active in Berlin came to the United States. Albert Einstein, George Gross, Arnold Schoenberg, Kurt Weill, Mies van der Rohe. The list of former residents of this city who changed the face of modern America is practically limitless. All right, he has just told me, and now they want to create heaven on earth. And we celebrate with you today. Well, thank you. Well, I thank you very much, and I wish you well. So we do celebrate with you today, remembering the heroic deeds of these, all of them here on this platform, and all Berliners, and the long-standing relationship between our two countries. But let's not forget the painful lessons of the not-so-recent past and draw on those experiences. Together we can build a better future for this city, for Europe, and for the world. And as we look toward the 21st century, The ideals the world associates with the free part of Berlin are gaining in recognition. History did not come to an end in 1945, and it will not do so now. Berlin is a city of the future. It stands as a beacon for freedom and shines brightly for all Berliners to see. In the name of the American people, I want to congratulate all 3 million Berliners on the occasion of your anniversary. And I'm proud to issue a presidential proclamation today honoring Berlin. Perhaps more than the people of any other city, you, the free people of Berlin, have demonstrated to the world the value of human liberty. So it is that we have so much to celebrate today. And so it is that, on behalf of my nation, I thank you. Having witnessed your courage and determination for all these years, I am confident in extending the heartfelt best wishes of all Americans for your city's future. And for those of you here today who are with our armed forces and who are here, I want to tell you that nothing in the job I have has made me more proud than of you, the men and women, wearing our military uniform.
Mr. President, I now have the honor of asking you to present your official proclamation on the 750th anniversary of Berlin to the governing mayor, Eberhard Diepken.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Berlin. Happy birthday to you.
And of course, a birthday celebration, certainly an American birthday type celebration, would not be complete without balloons, birthday cake, and a big round of happy birthday to you. What you see there is about 20,000 red, white, and blue balloons coming down from the ceilings of the Bihala, as well as 2,000 candy-filled parachutes reminiscent of the candy bombers during the Berlin airlift. There's no doubt about that. That certainly looks like a big birthday party. President Reagan and his wife Nancy will soon exit the Bihala. There come the parachutes. They each have a little bag of candy on the end of them. As I said, President and Mrs. Reagan will soon be exiting the Bihala to go out and get back on Air Force One and head on to Bonn. I'd say it's been a big day. Mayor Eberhard Diepken checking out the frosting there. And everybody else trying to catch candy parachutes. Evidently, the mayor approves of the American frosting. And the balloons and parachutes continue to come from the ceiling. Everybody grabbing what they can. As we said earlier, there are about 2,500 guests here out at the Valhalla. Guests of President Reagan, who is hosting this birthday party for the city of Berlin on the occasion of their 750th anniversary. The president and his wife saying their final hellos and congratulations to Berliners and Americans. And they will now head out the back of Valhalla back onto Air Force One. As I can see the flight line from where I'm sitting, and the Berlin Brigade band and a couple of platoons of American service members are waiting for the departure ceremony. And as for me, well, I'm going to give it back to you, Brian, in the studio.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. I think your comment was probably the best. Indeed, it has been a big day. We now conclude our coverage of the president's visit in Berlin. The chief executive and his wife are now preparing to depart Berlin on board Air Force One. While in the city, President Reagan reviewed the troops at Tempelhof Central Airport. He then proceeded to the Schloss Bellevue for a brief meeting with West German President Richard von Weizsäcker. The president then called upon Soviet General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down the Berlin Wall and major address delivered in front of the Brandenburg Gate. And now, as you have just seen, the president and his wife Nancy sang happy birthday to Berlin. President Reagan drew his largest applause from the sense of humor that he displayed throughout his speech. We now conclude our special report on the president in Berlin. On behalf of myself, Army Sergeant Brian Hart, and the entire AFN staff, good afternoon. We now return to regularly scheduled programming, The Today Show.
This is AFN's Berlin Tonight, keeping you in touch with the day's events. Compiled from major wire services and public affairs offices.
Good evening. President Reagan visited West Berlin today. The president was accompanied by his wife Nancy and various other dignitaries. The president arrived at Tempelhof Central Airport this morning at 11:45, and from there he filled his 4.5-hour stay in the city with a myriad of important events. With a look at the president and his trip is Army Sergeant Pam Proper.
President Reagan, for the second time as U.S. Commander-in-Chief, paid a visit to Berlin. Greeting him at Tempelhof Central Airport, U.S. Ambassador to West Germany Richard Burt and his wife Gail. Brigadier General Jack Woodall, Berlin Brigade Commander, invited the President to inspect the Joint Military Honor Guard. The President and First Lady Nancy were then escorted to Schloss Bellevue for a photo session and an informal meeting with West German President and Mrs. Richard von Weizsäcker. This year marks the first time the heads of the three Western Allied powers have met President von Weizsäcker at his official Berlin residence. Earlier, Britain's Queen Elizabeth and French President Francois Mitterrand met with the West German President at Bellevue. This gesture emphasizes the importance Western allies place on ties between Berlin and the Federal Republic. West German Chancellor Helmut Kohl greeted the Reagans at the Reichstag, where a tour there included a visit with representatives of the Trümmerfrauen, or rubble women. These women helped rebuild Berlin with their bare hands after the war. Berlin's mayor, Eberhard Diepken, showed the Reagans a view of the Berlin Wall from the east balcony of the Reichstag. President Reagan came to Berlin with a twofold mission: to participate in the city's 750th anniversary and to issue a challenge to Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev.
There is one sign the Soviets can make that would be unmistakable, that would advance dramatically the cause of freedom and peace. General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. I understand the fear of war and the pain of division that afflict this continent, and I pledge to you my country's efforts to help overcome these burdens. To be sure, we in the West must resist Soviet expansion. East and West do not mistrust each other because we're armed. We're armed because we mistrust each other.
The president also expressed hope for the two Berlins to participate together in world events.
International sports competitions of all kinds could take place in both parts of this city. And what better way to demonstrate to the world the openness of this city than to offer in some future year to hold the Olympic Games here in Berlin, East and West.
The final stop was Bihala at Tempelhof Airport, where 2,500 Germans and Americans put on a party for the city of Berlin. There were 20,000 balloons and 2,000 tiny parachutes with candies attached, symbolizing the Berlin airlift. On this 750th anniversary of Berlin, there's hope that one day East and West will celebrate the city's history together. Sergeant Pam Proper, AFN Berlin.
Once the president completed his scheduled activities in Berlin, it was off to Air Force One and the trip home, but there are stops for the president along the way. Army Sergeant Greg Foss reports.
After attending a birthday party at Tempelhof Central Airport's Bihala for the 750th anniversary of Berlin, the President and Mrs. Reagan boarded Air Force One at Tempelhof Central Airport for their trip back to the United States. The President, spending 4.5 hours in the city of Berlin, had a chance to meet and greet with a lot of the important and maybe the not so important people of the city of Berlin. An enjoyable time for all. I'm Army Sergeant Greg Foss for AFN Berlin.
At the American birthday party for Berlin, President Reagan told a group of invited guests assembled at the Tempelhof Central Airport's Bihala that U.S. troops would stay in Berlin as long as they were wanted. He also made references to East Germans, which he said were watching his visit on television, and told them his birthday party in West Berlin was for them as well as West Berliners. Earlier, while the president spoke at the Brandenburg Gate, television pictures zoomed in on East Germans that were listening to his speech a couple of hundred meters away on the eastern side of the Berlin Wall. The Associated Press says loudspeakers from the public address system used by the president could be heard at their location. It was the same spot used by youths earlier this week to listen to a West Berlin rock concert. That assemblage of East Berlin youths ended in a riot as German police moved in to turn the young people away from the wall. President Reagan's West Berlin trip was preceded by a massive protest march last night in downtown West Berlin. The Associated Press says hundreds of demonstrators smashed windows, looted stores, and battled with police for several hours following a largely peaceful march through the downtown area. Authorities estimated that 24,000 people marched in the protest. That figure was disputed by organizers of the event, who said there were 80,000 participants. The protesters marched down West Berlin's Kurfürstendamm carrying a large banner which read, quote, "We say no to Reagan's policies," close quote. The violence came at the end of the march when hundreds of radicals in ski masks smashed store windows and looted stores. Police moved in and forced the protesters out of the Kurfürstendamm area toward the districts of Schöneberg and Kreuzberg. Police were equipped with helmets, shields, and clubs. The Berliner Morgenpost newspaper says the rioters were visibly impressed with the strength of the police force and cleared the area in separate groups. The march started at 7 in the evening and had cleared up by about 9:30, with isolated incidents lasting until about 3 this morning. The AP says 59 were arrested and 67 policemen were injured in the disturbances. The dollar was up slightly in trading today, but not enough to affect local exchange rates. The greenback rose in what was described as thin trading. President Reagan's statement yesterday, following the economic summit in Venice, that the dollar could reasonably be expected to decline further, was clarified by White House spokesman Marlin Fitzwater. He said the president was not suggesting that the dollar fall further. Through the weekend, your buck buys 1 mark, 78 Pfennig. During President Reagan's foreign policy address at the Brandenburg Gate this afternoon, the chief executive made a number of statements about Berlin, but he wasn't the only speaker on the program. West German Chancellor Helmut Kohl and West Berlin governing Mayor Eberhard Diepgen also talked about the Berlin Wall and the celebration of Berlin's 750th birthday.
Uns schmerzt alle, dass die Berliner
we all feel pain at the thought that the Berliners
in einer geteilten Stadt
have
begehen müssen.
to celebrate their 750th anniversary in a divided city.
Und Schießbefehl.
The wall, barbed wire,
Erweisen gerade auch
the
in diesem
order to shoot
Geburtstagsjahr
and kill
ihre ganze
in this
Unmenschlichkeit.
anniversary year
Und wir
are
haben uns in
proving
der
their
Vergangenheit damit nicht
inhumanity.
abgefunden.
We have not come
Wir
to
werden
terms
dies heute
with this
nicht
in the
tun
past.
und
We will
morgen
not
auch
do
nicht.
so today or tomorrow.
General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
The The total of East Berlin youths arrested for rioting during a West Berlin rock concert has risen. Early reports indicated that a total of 50 young people were arrested during 3 nights of rock music played in front of the Reichstag, about 200 yards from where the East German youths were listening to the music on the eastern side of the Berlin Wall, just behind where President Reagan spoke today. Der Tagesspiegel newspaper says at least 300 youths were arrested on Monday night, as opposed to the total of 50 presumed arrested for the entire 3-day period. In addition, Der Tagesspiegel says East Berlin officials imposed prohibitions on travel to districts near the wall. Restrictions were also in effect for travel to a media festival in East Berlin, where the East German Neues Deutschland newspaper is planning rock and pop concerts as well. Der Tagesspiegel says the foreign ministers of the protective powers and West German officials have stated that they regret sharp actions against those East German rock fans. The 4 foreign ministers spoke about the, quote, brutal police operation against the East German youths in their traditional meeting in which they discussed German and Berlin policy. Informed circles, anonymously quoted by Der Tagesspiegel, say the ministers' point of view is that the youths wanted to listen to the concert, and that was all they wanted to do. As the ministers reviewed the situation in Berlin in regards to the city's 750th anniversary, they said they regretted the hindrances in intercity contacts which were built up by the policy of the Soviet Union and East Germany. They also said, however, that during 1987, possibilities for further cooperation within the city still exist. And now for the weather forecast. The German National Weather Service says to expect clouds and a chance of thunderstorms over the weekend. Temperatures will also be a little bit cooler. On the weather map, there's a low over Scandinavia and a cold front across Central Europe. There's also activity off the map, keeping our weather systems unstable enough to offer rain and thunderstorms to Berlin. There's a high pressure system also in the Atlantic. Europe cities report mixed conditions tonight. Oslo showing 52 degrees and cloudy skies this evening. London 63 and cloudy. Paris 68 and cloudy. Madrid 81, the hot spot, rather not the hot spot, but not a bad place to be either. Partly cloudy skies there. Rome is the hot spot. I'm going to take that back again. That's 86 degrees in Rome. Athens is the hot spot, 91 degrees and fair. Vienna 75 and fair. Frankfurt 63 at overcast skies. Presently in Berlin, winds are light from the northwest. Barometric pressure is 1,018 millibars and steady. Relative humidity is 64%. The temperature at this hour, 63 degrees Fahrenheit or 17 degrees Celsius. And for tonight, look for cloudy to overcast skies and temporary rain. There's also a chance of thunderstorms. Winds will be light and variable with a low of 54 degrees Fahrenheit or 12 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow, it'll be cloudy with sunny intervals and a chance of afternoon thunderstorms. The winds will be light from the west with a high of 68 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 20 degrees Celsius. And for the weekend, expect a chance of afternoon thunderstorms on both Saturday and Sunday. Temperatures should range from 54 to 68. Well, even though there were protests against President Reagan last night, not all demonstrations against the president have been unfavorable, or should we say for the president as well. The Associated Press says East German officials whitewashed the Berlin Wall on the western side of the barrier, which is a frequent practice before Western VIPs arrive at the wall near the Brandenburg Gate where the president spoke today. That was the case yesterday with the East Germans. They painted over the usual graffiti on the wall, but apparently sometime last night, someone blemished the wall's smooth exterior with a fresh new slogan. Before the wall was painted, it had said, "Ronald Reagan, go home." With the new paint job and nighttime to hide the work of the artist, the wall now says, "Hello world, welcome Reagan, 1987. An official of the East Berlin U.S. Embassy said he thought the new slogan was the unauthorized work of some U.S. Army soldiers stationed in West Berlin. And that's Berlin Tonight for this historic day of June 12, 1987, the day that President Reagan came to Berlin for the second time. Join us on Berlin PM tonight at 10 minutes till 8. The program will feature the Ron Colley Circus. And for the weekend sports schedule, check the Stars and Stripes for up-to-date listings. The most notable event, is Game 6 of the NBA Championship Series. That game is in Los Angeles and starts at 9:30 Sunday night, our time. I'm Army Sergeant Brian Hart. For Berlin Tonight Director Specialist Ted Cohen and all of us at AFN, good night.
This has been AFN's Berlin Tonight, compiled from major wire services and public affairs offices.